Hello, good morning.
So if it wasn't obvious from the slide behind me, I will be talking about selling your e-commerce business, making your business sellable and valuable. And it also wasn't obvious from the slide behind me, I'm from e-com brokers. So let me give you a little bit more information about me and us. I'm probably best known as the founder of Discretionary, a fitness brand which I scaled to mid-seven figures and then exited in late 2019, right before this explosion in mergers and acquisitions that we're currently seeing. Is this working?
Yeah? No? Is that a bit better? Okay.
I'll hold it really close to my face. So I'm a brand builder, I'm a consultant, I've been there, I've done it, and I'm still doing it. Can you hear me? Is that all right? Yeah. I've been there, I've done it, I'm still doing it. I think that helps because it means I understand what it is like to be you, to be in your shoes, to own and operate an e-commerce business. My co-founder, Alison Walker, she's got more than 20 years mergers and acquisitions experience. She's the director of an accountancy firm called Mint Accounting, which specializes in e-commerce. And the inspiration for us combining our skill sets in e-com brokers was when I sold my fitness brand through a broker. The experience with the broker I used could have been significantly better. Alison came to the rescue, tidied up the mess. At the end of the process, we said, let's combine our skills. Me on the e-commerce side, Alison on the accountancy and the mergers and acquisitions side. So, why sell your e-commerce business? Well, if I may, I think that's the wrong question. I think a better question is why make your e-commerce business sellable? Because if you think about your life and your business and the industry you're in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, the chances are there's going to need to be an end game. You probably don't want to be doing this forever. You may or may not want to retire at some point or pass the business on, and you don't know what regulations or changes there's going to be, and how difficult will it be to keep up with that. But what we do know is the best way to make money in e-commerce is to build a valuable asset and then sell it. And so, why might you want to sell in the nearer term? Perhaps you need the money. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time who have loved their business and loved their brand, but now they're really excited about a new brand. They have much more energy in the morning to get out of bed and run that brand, and they need the money from their first brand to fund that. Perhaps you want to sail around the world. We just sold a business for a chap who is now sailing around the world. Or perhaps you want to live a life of leisure. I think that might be a bit boring, but some people do want to do that. Maybe your business has almost peaked. It's growing, you haven't maxed out growth, and it's ready for a new potential buyer to take the growth you've enjoyed and accelerate it even more. Or perhaps it's just time to move on. You no longer have the time, the inclination to get up and go, or the resources to take the business where it could go. Maybe you recognize you've built a great brand, it's in demand, and you could sell it for quite a lot of money. But some of you will be thinking, yeah, but Ben, I don't want to sell now, nor even the near or medium term. But you should still plan. Because what you cannot do is wake up one day and immediately sell your business or decide to sell your business. But what you can do is wake up more or less now and put together a plan to make your business sellable and valuable, so that when the day does come that you wake up and you want to sell your business, you can take your sellable and valuable business to market. Orienteering without a map or a compass is not a good idea. You don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. But if you get your business value more or less now, then you know what it's worth, you know where you're going. You have the foundations of a plan of where to go. And you can work with experts to make your business sellable and valuable. And this means that when aggregators come to you, and they will, and they're generally nice guys, you will know what you're dealing with. So, I'm going to talk you through a worked example, a business that we sold for around $2.5 million. But before I get into the numbers, I want to talk about what actually makes a business sellable and valuable. And I'm going to talk about several aspects. And in a few minutes, I'll come back and talk about what good looks like, okay? So the first one is timing. You want your business to be growing, but not maxed out. The next one is stable. You want your business to be stable. What I mean by that is you're selling in a favorable niche. I'll talk about what that is shortly. You're not participating in any black hat strategies, and it's transferable. Because a new owner wants to pick up your business and drop it into their existing ecosystem. So you want to make that as easy as possible. And a good test of transferability is the leg break test. Ask yourself, if I break both of my legs and I end up in hospital for a few weeks, will my business run without me? And if it will, it's quite transferable. If it won't, that's okay, but you've got some work to do to make it so. So, this clip is a bit on. The best way to make it so is to build systems and processes, such that you have a system and process for everything that happens in your business, and it makes it really easy for a new owner to onboard your business. Your business needs to be really well documented in terms of the financial documentation, the tax documentation, of course, your company documentation. You need to have all of these things in place. And your business needs to be defensible. And that means you need to have a brand. What you cannot be doing is just selling a mishmash of stuff on Amazon. But if you have built a brand of which Amazon is just a sales channel, then you have something defensible. A suite of products that solves problems for a particular group of people with fans. And if you protect that brand with intellectual property, trademarks, and patents, then we're really talking. And that brand needs to be diversified. Now, you don't need to be diversified across all these aspects, but if for a couple of them you've got several things going on, then that's really going to help. For example, if you're selling on more than one channel, perhaps Amazon and your website, or Amazon and Etsy. You're selling in more than one market, perhaps US and the UK, or the UK and Europe, or even just the UK, but with a clear option for a new owner to expand into Europe. SKUs. You don't want to be relying on one or two SKUs. If your factory goes up in flames, or there's an intellectual property dispute and you have to stop selling, then you're in a pickle. But if you've got quite a few SKUs, then you're not so reliant just on one or two. And traffic. You don't want to be driving all the traffic to your website from one Facebook ads account. What if it gets banned, or the rules on advertising your products change, for example? Suppliers. Suppliers are really important because when an owner or a new potential owner buys your business, they're buying the relationship you have with your suppliers. So you need to have a great relationship with them, of course, and they need to produce quality products that comply with all the right standards, particularly environmental and social standards. And of course, your business needs to be efficient because a new owner is going to drop your business into their existing setup, which means automating it, for example, for PPC, inventory management, email, chat is really important, and having a team in place to manage things like social, the day-to-day account management, and email marketing is really important as well. So, looking a bit deeper on this example, okay? This business went to market for around $2.5 million. The revenue was 1.8, and the seller's discretionary earnings, which I'll explain in a few minutes, was 450,000. That's not profit, but for one moment, the purposes of this slide, imagine that's profit. That's 25%. Most buyers are not going to look at anything less than 15, 10, and an absolute push if there's some really attractive aspects that makes them want to buy the brand. So how did we arrive at a $2.5 million valuation for this business? I will explain in a few minutes, but there's some terms that I need to explain to you first. First of all, how do we value the business? We multiply the trailing 12-month performance by a multiple. What is performance? We measure performance in a couple of ways. First is something called EBITDA, which is a measure of cash flow. It's an accounting term which goes beyond the scope of today's presentation. But essentially, if you imagine the acquisition of a more traditional business, like a shop, you're taking on everything associated with the shop, including the infrastructure and the costs. There's not very much that can be stripped out of that. So that's where we use EBITDA. But in e-commerce, we use an adjusted EBITDA, which is called seller's discretionary earnings. And essentially, if you imagine, it's basically your sales revenue minus your costs of goods, minus other costs that can't be stripped away from those sales, such as advertising spend. And so, for simplicity, because everybody in the room has a different business, our seller's discretionary earnings is basically our net income plus something called add-backs and plus something called adjustments. I'll explain those two terms in a moment. We multiply that by the multiple, and everybody gets very excited about multiples, and that gives us the price of the business. And I'll explain multiples again in a minute. I know there's a lot of terms here. Now, this does not include the landed cost of inventory at the time of sale. Be careful, because there are some organizations that will try to artificially inflate the multiples that they shout around on social media because they've included inventory, and that's a little bit naughty. So add-backs come in several forms. First of all, there's personal-related expenses. That's your salary, your phone, your internet, your office costs, anything related to you that you're putting through the business. It simply isn't going to apply to a larger organization that buys your brand. Then we have one-off costs that aren't going to be repeated. These are things that have been paid for that don't need to be paid for again. You paid for your trademark, you paid for that video shoot last week, you paid for those photos to be taken, not going to be repeated. We can remove them from the lost part of the P&L sheet and push up your seller's discretionary earnings. And then there are repeated costs that are not applicable. That monthly mentorship fee, your monthly mastermind fee, your accounting fee, it doesn't apply to the new owners. They either don't need these or they've already got them. The Helium 10 fee that you're paying for, we can remove that from the P&L sheet, which boosts your SDE. And then we have more sophisticated adjustments. And these recognize change in the P&L, in particular things like COGS. So I'll give you one quick example. I mentioned before that we value the business based on a trailing 12-month performance. Well, what if 3 months ago you negotiated a new price on a product with a supplier, and now you make an extra $2 every time you sell a unit, and you sell 50 of those a day? It's $100 extra profit a day, which is 36.5 grand extra profit per year. Now, it's not really fair to you if we're valuing it based on the trailing 12 months, but we only include the last 3 months, right? But the new owner is going to get the benefit of that extra $2 per unit going forward for all time. So we can adjust as if you'd always sourced the product for that lower price from that manufacturer. And when we apply a 4x multiple to that, that's an extra 150 grand added to the value of the business. You do that across several products, we're talking high 6, maybe even 7 figures added to the value of the business. And that's just one example. There's many of these. You can see why you really need experts to be doing this for you. So, coming on to multiples then, because everybody gets very, very excited about multiples. Talk through a couple of examples. If your SDE is, say, 100 grand, your business is 2 years old, it's diversified, it's growing, you're probably going to get 3 to 4.5x. If your SDE is 500 grand, with massive off-Amazon sales, lots of intellectual property, massive growth, it's 5 years old, could be 4 to 7x. But it's not quite as important as everybody thinks. What's more important is the SDE that's multiplied by the multiple in the first place, which we've just spoken about, but also the overall deal in and of itself. Let me give you a couple of examples. We sold a business that was doing $2 million SDE. The seller's got 12.6 million cash at closing and a guaranteed 700 grand after 12 months. So that's $13.3 million guaranteed, right? Not bad. If in the first year, and also the second year after closing, the SDE exceeded that baseline 2 million, they also got 50% of the increment above that SDE. Pretty good earner. And that didn't include inventory, by the way. So that's a guaranteed 6.65x, and the inventory is paid separately, and there's an earnout. And the reason there's an earnout is the seller saw the benefit of an earnout because they saw where the business was going. Now contrast that with this. This was a smaller business, only 383 grand SDE. The seller just wanted to move on. They wanted to get rid of it. They sold it for only 3.5x, 100% cash at closing, so they got $1.34 million up front. But that was absolutely fine for this person. That suited their goals and their life, and that is what it's all about. It's about your goals and what works for you. So it's not all about the multiple. Everybody gets very excited about multiples. So coming back then to this slide I showed you earlier, how did we arrive at a $2.5 million valuation? We applied a 5.55x multiple. Why? The average in e-commerce right now is about 5. Some people will tell you it's less for obvious reasons. Some people will tell you it's more, also for obvious reasons. We know it's about 5 based on what we're selling and our partner brokers and investment banks are selling. So 5.55 is pretty good. So why did we get a pretty good multiple? It was 4 years old with consistent growth. It had clear opportunities for further growth into international markets, and the seller had a list of products that they could continue to develop. It was in a good niche, so some good niches like baby, home and garden, sports, toys. These are never going to go away. They weren't participating in any black hat strategies, and the business was transferable. They had systems and processes to drop into the ecosystem of the new owner, and they had a team in place as well. It was well documented. They'd been through a process with a good broker to make sure that the numbers and the accounts and all the documents were all in good order. And they had a brand with raving fans on and off Amazon. And they protected their brand, not just where they were selling in the US and Europe, but in China where they were manufacturing as well. And that's really important. And they had a patent on their own product as well, which was great. They were diversified. They were selling on Amazon, Walmart, on their own website, also in the UK, which gave the easy opportunity to expand into Europe, and that's what the buyers want. They want growth. They had a good number of SKUs, 7. Not so many that it's really complex, but enough that if 1 or 2 go down, you're not in a total pickle. And they were driving traffic to their website from several sources. Their suppliers were great. They visited them 3 times. They were passing quality inspections frequently, 99% of the time, and they complied with these important standards on quality and environmental and social aspects, ISO 9001 and 14001. And the business was efficient. PVC was run by an agency. Inventory was organized with so stocked. Email and chatbots were automated, and they had a team running the day-to-day. But how does a potential buyer know that any of that is true? Due diligence. When you're selling your business, you're going to enter into a due diligence phase where you sign something called a letter of intent, which basically says, buyer, take 30, 45 days to do your due diligence. We promise not to sell to anyone else, and you can check that everything is as it should be. And potential buyers are going to look at 3 main aspects. They're going to look at commercial, so sales, marketing, and manufacturing. They're going to look at financial, so tax, payments, accounts. And they're going to look at legal, so that's intellectual property, contracts, and insurance. And if you take nothing else away from my presentation today, it's simply this. In the running of your business, maybe going once a month or so, and just make sure that all your T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and you have everything organized, neat and tidy with a ribbon on top in terms of these aspects. It'll make your life a heck of a lot easier going forward. And that's why when we're helping people sell their business, we get them going on the due diligence ahead of time so that everything's really impressive to potential buyers. Because when Baldwin Acquisitions is presenting your business to the investment committee, the investment committee is much more likely to be impressed by your business than another business they're looking at if you've got all of this ship shape. And it also means that if they find anything in due diligence that they don't like, it's a sweeter pill to swallow, and they're much more likely to be happy to pay more for your business than for somebody else's, which is on the table. So, how can you sell your business, or how ought to sell your business? You really ought to sell using a qualified brokerage. Ideally, these need to be experts with experience on all sides of the equation. That means they're brand owners and operators, they've got the mergers and acquisitions experience, and they're accountants, who will work with you until you're ready and not the other way around. They will work with you to add value to your business, position your business properly to a pool of the right buyers, and help structure the deal to suit you. The last thing you want to do is not plan ahead. If you find out what your business is worth now, you can reverse engineer your plan to get the deal that you deserve for a business you work really hard on. The number one mistake people make is getting an offer and going it alone or using a generic service. We all hire experts in our business, translations, PPC. Why would you not work with experts when it comes to your most valuable asset, which is, of course, your business? I hope that was enjoyable. I'm here to answer any questions, and you can, of course, email me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Ben? Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Well done. Just wanted to ask you, you said you can totally sell your business. What about if you want to get involved in the business after selling it? I mean, is there an option where you can still be involved?
That's a really good question. It's an important question because the deal should suit you. So you might want to retain equity in your business, or you might want to sell the whole thing but stay on as a consultant, either on an hourly basis or in a product development role. You know, for instance, we've helped people structure deals whereby they've sold 100% of the business, but there's a side deal whereby they continue to develop products for the brand because that's the part they love the most in exchange for a profit share on those products. And so that's why it's really important that you work with experts, because it's about what you want and your goals. It's not, you know, sell your business to us in 30 days and give you 100% cash at closing. It's about your life and your business that you put your heart into.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to know, in terms of, obviously, you guys take a fee, if I'm just presuming on the exit. When do you advise your clients? You spoke about timing. If they're, for instance, only selling in one marketplace, do you tell them to go into new markets? Do you advise them when you think that the business could have a much higher multiple, or is it for you more about the exit?
It really depends. So, for instance, we might work with somebody for whom it's clear that in order to, we might look at their business and say to them, it's currently worth $500,000. And they say, I didn't want to sell it for less than $1 million. One of the clear opportunities for growth for them might be to get into another marketplace, in which case, that's what we'll advise them to do. What we don't do and what any good intermediary should be doing is exploring opportunities for sellers to actually reach their goal. And that may involve getting into other markets or marketplaces, using something, like ecommerce, for instance, to expand that kind of reach.
So just to follow up on that, so have you seen that if they're selling, for instance, less SKUs in more markets, for instance, Germany, UK, and you say that the P that they're exiting for is a bit higher, or is it the same?
Sorry, can you say that?
So if they, for instance, sell in only one market compared to, let's say, 3-4 markets, would the PE be influenced by the amount of different markets you sell in?
It depends on the complexity. Like, for example, if they're selling across a whole bunch of channels and the particular buyer is really focused on, say, Amazon and D2C websites, then they're going to be less excited about lots and lots of channels. But they might be quite excited about the opportunity to expand on a single channel, say Amazon, across multiple international marketplaces, if that makes sense.
Okay, we've got time for just 2 more questions. So just this gentleman here to start with.
Hiya. Is there a difference in the multiple depending upon the type of business that's being sold? So in terms of an asset buy or a brand buy? So rather than just going in and buying a brand business, an asset business being a production unit factory making along with 20 employees, etc.
Yeah, so at the minute in e-commerce, what we're really seeing is it's typically the purchase of a brand. Right, that's what's getting most of the private equity aggregators, if you like, very excited. However, the first mainstream aggregator that we really heard about, that came to exist in late 2018 was Thrasio. Since them and others, they've been the canary in the coal mine, if you like, and more mature private equity-backed families of brands have been running around for decades, just not necessarily in e-commerce and marketplaces like Amazon, have been watching and waiting. And those guys are a bit more amenable to a more traditional purchase where they will indeed buy, as you said, like a facility, for example. But typically in e-commerce, most people are going to be selling their brand, and there will be very little in terms of physical infrastructure that's going to go with that.
And okay, in terms of that as well, in fees with an e-commerce broker, so to speak, is there a difference in fees for a more complicated sale like that? I.e. an asset sale to find the buyer and obviously all the processes that we're going to go through in terms of due diligence.
Yeah, typically the fees are based as a percentage of the total deal at closing, and so therefore brokers kind of have to accept that some deals will be more complex than others. So you might have a deal that's, both of the deals are $50 million. One's more complex than the other, but the broker's not going to get paid any more for a more complex job, if you like.
Any chance of getting an idea of the sort of percentage? Is that a one-to-one conversation?
I'm quite happy to tell you. Well, first of all, so if you head over to our website, our fees are on there. For the smallest deals, it's 12%, and for the largest deals, it's 1.75%. And different brokers will have different fee structures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to wrap it up there because we're running over. Ben, will you be here over lunch?
I'm here for lunch, and I've got to fly home about 2 to sunny Aberdeen.